Listening to the Jake Asman Show on the SportsMap Radio Network.
Presented by Rocket Mortgage.
Live from the O'Reilly Auto Parts Studios, here's Jake Asman.
Let's start with Giannis. Are you expecting Giannis to play game one tomorrow?
No, we'll continue to update it. He's had a good day. He's making progress. But I don't have expectations either way.
What does a good day entail? What has he done? Like, where is he at physically? Just what has he done today?
Yeah, he's done court work again today. And so he's making progress, and, we'll continue to update.
So there is your Giannis update from the head coach of the Milwaukee Bucks, Mike Budenholzer, yesterday. He's asked, well, you said he's making progress. What does that entail? And, well, you kind of got a whole lot of nothing there. Here's the reality. Giannis is listed as doubtful for tonight. He's not playing. I think we all could say that. Does he play game two, though? That's the real question. And I don't totally rule that out. I think even that, though, at this point, is probably unlikely if we're being honest. I think the likelihood that we see Giannis in this series is strong. I'd be surprised if he doesn't at least try and play in one of these games. I could see Giannis playing in game three. Now, I'm not a doctor. I'm about to, I guess, try and play one here on national radio. But the reality is Giannis suffered his injury last Tuesday. That's a week ago from today. Game three would be on July 11th. That'd be Sunday night. So that'd be, almost 2 weeks from when he suffered the injury. He has a hyperextended knee. If he could go, I feel like game three, first game back in Milwaukee, especially if his team's down 0-2, would be the game for him to try and come back. Now, maybe if his team splits, if the Bucks can go out there and either win tonight or win game two on Thursday, maybe they could delay Giannis as long as possible. But I'd be surprised if he doesn't at least play at some point in the series. He's, say whatever you want about Giannis. Giannis is tough. If he could play, he's going to try. A hyperextended knee is certainly not a torn ACL, so the Bucks definitely got a break with the injury diagnosis. But that kind of just goes back to what the theme for the playoffs has been. Star players going down. And there's not a team that's benefited more from star players going down than the Phoenix Suns. I don't want to take anything away from the Suns because they've dealt with their own issues, right? They didn't have Chris Paul for games one or game two against the Clippers in the conference finals. But let's be fair here. The Suns maybe don't get by the Lakers in the first round if Anthony Davis doesn't injure himself. Then in the second round, I think they still would have beaten the Denver Nuggets had Jamal Murray played. But Jamal Murray didn't play, and they obviously, as you might recall, Suns in 4 took down the Denver Nuggets. And then you get to the conference finals, and they didn't have to face the Clippers team with Kawhi Leonard. So, the fact of the matter is the Suns have benefited from injuries to star players more than any other team. Now, Milwaukee benefited. They played a Nets team without really Kyrie Irving, with a hobbled James Harden. So clearly, the Bucks have benefited from injuries as well, but they also lost Giannis in the conference finals and had to overcome that. So at the end of the day, what does it all mean? It means if you're a Suns fan, this has to be the year that you win the championship. I think there's far more pressure on the Suns than the Bucks. The Suns are a team that's led by a point guard that's 36 years old. Who knows if Chris Paul will be healthy enough a year from now to be taking another team to the finals. The Suns, you haven't been in the finals since 1993. You're looking for your first ever championship. Now's the time to get it done. You're not going to have to deal with Giannis tonight. You have home court in the series. You're basically a minus 200 favorite to win the championship. So, you're a pretty hefty favorite, all things considered here. Far more pressure on the Suns to deliver here, I would say, than pressure necessarily on the Bucks. And the Bucks have the built-in excuse if Giannis doesn't play in the first 2 games. That's just a reality. So I do think this is a good series. I don't think, this is going to be Suns in 4, Suns in 5, but I do expect Phoenix to win. I think they're the better team. And I also don't trust the Bucks in close games yet. I just don't. I know they've won a bunch of them in the playoffs. They have played really well. But give me the team that has Chris Paul at the end of these games running the offense than the team that doesn't. Plus, I think the coaching advantage here is pretty significant. I think Monty Williams has proven he's a much better coach than Mike Budenholzer. I think Budenholzer sometimes could be, maybe overly criticized. Like, I don't think he's a terrible coach by any means, but even Bucks fans would tell you he's not a good in-game coach. We had Matt Pauley on yesterday, who does radio in Milwaukee, and of course for us here on Sports Map, and he basically said as such, and he's right. So I look at this series and go, man, the Suns are the better team. They got to get it done. They have home court. Giannis is not playing probably games 1. I'd be surprised if he plays game 2. Now's the time. Now's the time. And for Chris Paul, there might not be more on the line for any player in this series than Chris Paul. You could say Giannis, but Giannis is hurt, and Giannis is still, 26? Like, he'll have time to get back to another finals. Chris Paul's 36 years old. We all know that he has never been to the finals before. That's why it was such a big deal he finally got there, and the way he got there. 41 points in a closeout game 6 against his old team, the Clippers. Like, we're all, unless you were, a Clippers fan, I think everyone's kind of rooting for Chris Paul here. Chris Paul is one of the best athletes in all sports that has never won a championship. That all could change if his team wins. Think about that. Name me some great athletes in sports that have had, that are as accomplished as Chris Paul is, that have never won a championship. There's not many. There are guys that haven't won before, but they're a lot younger than Chris Paul. Chris Paul's a first ballot Hall of Famer. He's one of the best point guards of all time. How many active athletes as good as Chris Paul have never won a championship? How many? In football, I could think of, Larry Fitzgerald. I could think of J.J. Watt. I'm talking about active athletes. In baseball, it's a little different because of the nature of the sport, but there are some baseball examples, right? Mike Trout hasn't won a ring yet. But seriously, active athletes that have never won a title. Who is more accomplished in that category than Chris Paul? And whether we say, it's not all about the rings and whatnot, at the end of the day, winning a championship does a lot for one's legacy. We've seen it over and over again. Winning a championship, takes you, it's like the cherry on top in a debate. It's like the tiebreaker. And that's the big thing, right? So if you're talking about an individual storyline here, there's probably not a player that has more on the line than Chris Paul in this series right here. But seriously, go through it. Name me like active athletes. Ron, you can feel free to jump in if you have one. For a while, that was probably Clayton Kershaw. And then Clayton Kershaw got over the hump last year, if you want the baseball example. You could say Jacob deGrom, but he's still younger, man. We're talking about Chris Paul is 36. This is not, once again, retired athletes. This is active guys. See, if Chris Paul were to retire, he's in, the Pat Ewing, Charles Barkley category. You have Dan Marino for football.
I think the two that you brought up, J.J. Watt and Larry Fitzgerald, are the two that I can't get out of my head right now.
Like, you have to, I guess the requirement for this would be you have to be playing at least like 10 seasons in your respective sport, and you have to be, a first ballot Hall of Famer. You want another one? I'll give you a hockey example. I see Jason Jerusalem wrote it in on Twitch. Carey Price, the goalie for the Canadians.
And he's not going to get one.
Probably not, but at least they didn't get swept. More of that coming up. So it really is a fascinating case study here. And I was doing the research for the show this morning, and it was tough for me to come up with a lot of names because it just shows you how good Chris Paul has been in his career that it's hard to find guys that are at that level. It's not retired guys. If we want to go through the retired guys, we can go through the Dan Marinos and the Charles Barkleys and, the Ted Williams, if you want to go all the way back. We can go through all that. Don Mattingly. We could go through, guys that had Hall of Fame careers that never won championships. But there's not that many that have had the careers of Chris Paul that haven't won that ring. And Chris Paul finally gets that opportunity. Another basketball example, just kind of going off the top of my head of an active guy, Carmelo Anthony. But as good as Melo is, and Melo is a first ballot Hall of Famer, there's no doubt. Chris Paul is a much better player than Carmelo Anthony. Much better. So that's why if Chris Paul's team were to win here, he's cementing his legacy. Just like Clayton Kershaw needed that championship with the Dodgers last year to cement his. Just like Alex Rodriguez needed that championship in 2009 with the Yankees to cement his. A-Rod never won with the Yankees. You know how different he'd be viewed by Yankee fans? A-Rod is still polarized by Yankee fans, but there's a respect factor that he carried a team to a title in 2009. Yankees don't win in 2009 without A-Rod. Ultimate Warrior writes in on YouTube, James Harden. James Harden's a good choice, but James Harden, to this point, still in his prime. Chris Paul, 36 years old, nearing the end of his career, even though he's still playing, obviously, at a very high level. But James Harden's a good one. Also, I see Jason in Jerusalem running. Well, Don Mattingly never even made the playoffs. He did his last year with the Yankees in 1995. Donnie Baseball did, in fact, make the playoffs. He had that big home run against Seattle, and Gary Thorne had that epic goal. Oh, hang on to the roof. By the way, Gary Thorne should have been the ESPN choice for the NHL. Legend. Gary Thorne should have been that guy. I know he's an older guy. Maybe ESPN wanted someone younger. They got Sean McDonough, who's phenomenal. But, man, I would have loved to have seen Gary Thorne involved in the NHL and ESPN. But that's just an aside view. So think about it. That's why there's so much on the line for Chris Paul. Because if he goes out there and wins, you'll never be able to say, oh, he's great, but he never won before. Because Chris Paul is a winner. He doesn't have the championship yet, but look everywhere he's been. The improvement the team makes year one when he gets there. It's ridiculous what he brings to the table. That's why he's got more on him to get it done now than any other player in the series. This was Chris Paul when asked about the pressure of playing in his first finals.
I think for us, it's balance, and whatever it is, you always got to remember this is a kid's game that we play. You know what I mean? So this is a blessing and an opportunity to play this game. So there's balance. I think our team knows when to lock in and when we got to enjoy the moment and enjoy ourselves.
Enjoy the moment. For Chris Paul, I hope he does enjoy the moment because he obviously waited, 16 years for this opportunity? And what I love the most about Chris Paul is that he doesn't fake it. He is who he is. I covered him here in Houston for 2 seasons. And despite all the fame, all the money he's made, the guy wants to win. Isn't that what we want from our athletes, to care as much as we do as fans? And Chris Paul does that. So I will absolutely be rooting for him. And if the Suns win, I'd be very happy for Chris. 800-224-2004. So come up with an athlete as accomplished as Chris Paul, active athlete that doesn't have a championship. I think Chris Paul is at the top of the list. As good as J.J. Watt is, football is a team sport. J.J. Watt's a defensive end. Basketball, you're one of 5 players on the court. It's a little different. You can impact the game more.
What about Carmelo?
Carmelo, I mentioned him. Great career, first ballot Hall of Famer. Chris Paul's the better player. Chris Paul, historically speaking, will be ranked higher than Melo. But Melo is a good case, but there's not that many. I don't know if there's any. I would have said Clayton Kershaw, but he won last year.
But again, that's a team. I don't. Why is it that we're talking about this and we're figuring, it's going to be easier in basketball for one player to make an impact than it is for, for Kershaw. He can't really make an impact except for the games that he plays. In the NFL, we can't really say, hey, J.J. Watt leads your team to a Super Bowl, although we kind of give Ray Lewis that kind of credit.
It's just a totally different sport. Totally different sport. 800-224-2004 if you want in on the NBA Finals. Who you got? I'm going Suns in 6. That's my official NBA Finals prediction here on the show. Coming up next, I want to get to some news yesterday out of Jacksonville. Trevor Lawrence has signed his rookie contract, and I'll tell you why it is significant for the Jets, just like it is significant for the Jaguars. Where am I going with this? We'll talk about it next right here on the Jake Asman Show on SportsMap Radio.
The Dave Smith Show.
The great Jim Lampley joining Dave Smith here. You said Mike Tyson has been